In this little video, it's a video that's going to accompany an asset pack that I'm releasing, which contains basically all the mocap for Fallen Angels. So that's for the Rebels and for Vader as well. Specifically, it's going to be all the mocap we recorded custom for it. And yeah, I'm just going to release it out there. All assets that are completely free, and it is the mocap data that we exported out. So they're exported straight from Rokoko Studio. So here's an example here, which is we're going to use as an example that we're going to go through in a moment of the Rebel when he stops, put his hand up and do a hand signal to stop to the other Rebels. And this is when like kind of the lighting dies down and things like that, and it starts to look really, really cool. So what's going to be contained within this pack then? So I'm just going to go back to my desktop over here. Get rid of that. It's going to come as this little zip file here. And within that, if I open that up, just close that, you're going to get two folders and a text file. So you're going to get an exports folder in here. So these are raw exports from Rokoko Studio using the default Rokoko Studio skeleton, which is called Rokoko Newton. There's another folder in here called Retargeting, which actually has some different animations within it. Hey guys, just this future me here. So just a little update. I just mentioned that there's two folders that have exports and retargeted in it. Don't worry about the retargeted folder. I'm just going to delete that now because I actually found all the original exports for the animations. So the process is identical. It's actually the same skeleton as well. It's just a different character name because it was recorded on a different PC. But yeah, these are all the animations you're going to get. So anyway, back to present me. This is just the raw data that hasn't been cleaned up, and it needs some work. We put in a lot of work to really make it look as good as it did when we made Fallen Angel. You can see here you got some issues with like hands clipping. There's a bit of jitter and stuff. A lot of this is just because at the time I was still learning how to use the tools, and it was being done in less than ideal conditions. Like for example, there were pipes in the floor and things like that, and it's quite sensitive to metal. Luckily, I don't really have that issue anymore because I've moved house. This is why this video has taken so long to come out. I just never got around to sorting it out. So yeah, this is the kind of thing we're going to be releasing. So for example, we'll have that, and then it is data that requires some cleaning up. So don't be expecting to load it up and it'll just work straight away. This is purely to give you a starting point, so you can just go in and start messing about with the animation data yourself and have some fun with creating content with it. So through the rest of this video, it's going to just kind of be a tutorial on how to actually make use of it. And I'm going to use Maya as an example just because that's the software I use, but there's no reason you couldn't find similar tutorials for retargeting in tools like Blender or 3ds Max or anything else that can come to mind. There'll definitely be a tutorial for it because retargeting animation is quite a common thing to do. There's also a little readme in here as well, just adding some notes just in case you got your hands on this pack without coming through the YouTube video. It just has a link to the YouTube video and that points to here, and some other nice little bits in there as well, bit of info. Okay, so let's dive into it. So I'm going to open up Maya, a nice empty Maya scene here, create a new scene, and at the moment by default I've got the HumanIK window open. Also my windows are all over the place because I've recently switched to a 4K monitor and I'm just not used to it. But we are going to make use of the HumanIK tool in Maya to retarget it. So if you don't see this, you want to just go to Window, Animation Editors, HumanIK, and it will open it here for you, or somewhere else. It will open it somewhere. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the folder where the animations are stored. So in this case, I'm just going to, these are basically all extracted from the zip file in here. This is just the files I used to make the zip file. I'm going to go into this exports folder and I'm going to just click on this TM155 Rebel hand signal, and then default is just Rokoko Newton. PRY is just the character name in Rokoko Studio. Sego1 is just my way of making selects in it. So you can see Sego1 is this here. This is the select for the take that we're going to use. So it's actually the wrong take. This is the take we want. You can see I recorded loads and I didn't use it all. So that's the one we're going to use as an example in this case. Or shall we? Or shall we use something more interesting actually? Let's use something more interesting. Let's do this one. This is a cool one. This is when the Rebel's actually shooting at Vader and just starting to back up a bit. And it's just a cool bit of data, so we'll use that instead. Why not? So I'm going to import this in. To import it into Maya, you just drag and drop like that. And this window will normally pop up and hit import. If it turns around and says that it's not a recognized file type, you might need to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, and then just type FBX and see if the FBX Maya plugin is enabled. I am using Maya 2020 for this, by the way, so if it's not there, it might just be a case that you need a later Maya version, but I do remember it being in previous versions going back a few years. Anyway, this is what is contained within the FBX file. So it's a skeleton and some geometry. Oh, you know what I've done? I've imported it without importing the animation like an absolute spoon. So let's do that again, drag and drop. And then in the FBX importer, and if you don't see this, I'll show you how to enable that as well if it doesn't give you an error. I just want to make sure animation is ticked. My bad. And you can select the animation clip as well if you've got an FBX with multiple animation takes in it. For example, a motion builder scene would have that. Just something to bear in mind. Okay, and yeah, if you don't see that window, just real quick, it's just Window, Settings and Preferences, and then you want to go to, I think it's under Files and Projects, and then File Dialog. Here, it's just the, when you open something, it's just a different option for a different dialog box type. Mine's set to OS native, so that FBX window will always come up. And when I open something, it's my native OS, just like File Explorer here. And then you've got My Default, which is just the default Maya one. And sometimes the FBX window won't come up. So that's just a little quick tip on how to fix that. Anyway, back to the animation. So here we've got the animation data in there, which is great. And a very simple way just to get you started on retargeting it is to use HumanIK. So what I like to do with this is I like to use namespaces so we don't get naming clashes. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select a group on my root node, for the skeleton, and I'm going to just call it scale grp, and then I'm going to group this group and the Newton object together, and I'm going to call it Rokoko grp just for group. And the reason I've done this way is because not all skeletons are the same size, right? You know, people are different heights and stuff, so sometimes you might want to scale the data. So by putting this in a group like that, because obviously the root node has keys on it, if I just scale it like that in one key, then it's just going to disappear back in another key if there's a scale key on there. So a good practice is just to throw it in a group, and then you can move it around as well. You know, you can do all sorts. You can just move it there, put it on a slope, do whatever you want. So the reason I've done it is just so I can scale the data up and down and not have it double transform, because if I just did it all in one group together, I'll get a double transform and the joints will scale, and so will the geometry, and that's a double transform. You don't want that. So I'm just going to reset that back to as it is, because that's what we want. And on frame 0, there should be a T-pose, and this is what we're going to use to set up our HumanIK definition. So first thing I'm going to do is just deal with that name clash issue I just mentioned. So I'm going to select the root of this skeleton. I'm going to go to Window, General Editors, Namespace Editor. I'm going to delete this namespace because I don't want it. And then I'm going to click New, and I'm going to call it Data. And then with this root selected, I'm going to right click and hold in the viewport, select hierarchy, and that's going to select the entire joint hierarchy. And then in the namespace editor, with the data selected, I'm going to click add selected. And what this is going to do is put a namespace in front of all of these. The reason I've done this is because quite often skeletons will have the same names as joints. You know, your hips are your hips, for example, or they could be called pelvis, but you never really know until you import it, and then all things kind of go wrong. So setting a namespace on your source data is generally a useful way to go. And when you import data in, say you want to hot swap it, there are ways you can import it and have it account for a namespace. So I'm not going to dive into that today. The joys of the internet is you can search for pretty much anything. Okay, so to set this up to actually work for retargeting with HumanIK, we need to create a HumanIK definition. So on the right hand side of the HumanIK tool, which we opened earlier, you want to click on Create Character Definition, which is this one here. and this will bring up this window. I'm not going to dive too much into how to set up all this stuff and what they all do. There's countless videos on how to do that. This is just a quick start thing on how to use this data. So all you need to know is all this goes in there. So what we'll do is go to root, assign root, hips, assign hips, left thigh, left upper leg in this case, and you know, biped is always going to follow the same kind of standard setup because that's just how your skeleton works. And then left toe base. And you know, there's nothing stopping you from just deviating and experimenting and seeing what happens. Oh, I broke something there. There we go. Just being careful there. Okay. Right, spine. Spine. Go into this little menu here. Spine 2. Spine. CC spine 3 doesn't match up with spine 2 here, just with different naming conventions and stuff. That's why you retarget stuff. Okay, I'm going to do the neck now. Again, I'm not going to dive into this too much. I'm just doing this as a quick start guide. If you want to dive into this more, again, all you have to do. This is just if you're using Maya, but if you want to learn how to do it more, you just dive into my HumanIK tutorial, throw that into YouTube, and you will get a plethora of tutorials on how to do it. Okay, so that'll do. So you see this now green, which is good because we're in a nice clean T-pose. What I'm not going to do is the fingers because there's no finger data in this because I didn't have any smart gloves or anything. So we're just going to leave them blank. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rename the character. I'm going to call it data. And I'm going to lock it. Okay. Another thing I can do is hit this little save button here and it will save a template. So what I can do is I can call it Rokoko data. I'm going to clear the prefix, and you can also tell it where you want it to save. That's where it saves for me. By default, it will save it in app data roaming, Autodesk, HumanIK characterization tool 6 template, and it'll put it in that folder, which is quite handy to know because you can actually use these interchangeably. If you use Motion Builder, you can use it there as well. But I'm going to press OK on that. I don't know what's going on there. I'm just going to leave that. And then what you can do, let's say I wanted to unlock it and change the definition. Just going to select that. You can see here I've got a bunch of templates I can load in very quickly. There's actually one here I just tested earlier just to make sure I knew what I was doing. Okay, so now we've got a HumanIK definition. So we could actually, if we wanted to, if this was a rig we were using, we could create a control rig and actually animate, bake the data onto the control rig and play with that. But that's not what we're interested in. What we are interested in is retargeting this to another rig. Typically, what you might have is a HumanIK rig, right? If you're doing this, there are ways of basically baking down your animation to a custom rig. I'm not going to dive into that much, but there is a really good method of doing that called the Red9 animation binder, which is a really cool little elegant solution for doing it. I will show that off in a bit, but for now we're just going to keep it nice and simple. So through the magic of editing, I've just imported in just a simple mesh with a skeleton on it, and we're just going to quickly just set up a little control rig on it. You can see it's not got any head, but again, it's not really the point of what I'm trying to do here. It's just kind of just showing how to just get it onto a rig quickly, and then I'll show you a quick demo of something cool afterwards, which I'll probably make a video on how to make at some point. So what I need to do now, we've created our skeleton definition for our data, which is in here, and now I need to make one for our skeleton, which in this case it would go onto the walrus skeleton used in Battlefront, and then you can put this into Unreal if you want to make cinematics with it. So what I need to do now, you can see I've just loaded a T-pose animation onto it. It has to be in a T-pose, and to get it like that, it's really straightforward. You basically just line up the arms with the level x-axis or xz plane, and it'll be fine. So what I did is I created a T-pose FBX I can just drag and drop onto it, and it just works, gets into the right place. Anyway, tangent aside, let's get this done. So what I need to do now is I need to create a new character definition, and we need to do the same thing again on our walrus skeleton. So we'll do it very quickly. Just go to hips, spine to spine. And again, once you set this up once, you don't really have to do it again because you can save a template. And luckily, because it's symmetric and Maya is quite smart like that, it will just fill in one side for you. So you only have to do half a skeleton, which is pretty good. So we're just going to quickly do that. Toe base in there. And you kind of see that some of these joints have the same name as the Rokoko skeleton. Again, it helps with dealing with clashes and stuff to use a namespace, so it's not a problem. Right, next we're going to spine. So spine 1, spine 2. Cool. Just for the sake of, just because it's probably going to be asked about, I'm not really going to be releasing this with like any of these Star Wars assets with it, just because they're not mine. The mocap data is mine, so I can release that and do whatever I want with it. But when it comes to the actual stuff that's exported from Battlefront, I don't own it, so I'm not going to be releasing it. And then for this as well, I'm also going to just do the definition on the fingers. The reason being, you know, we're going to probably be animating with this, so we'll just quickly get that done. Won't take long. And it does do both hands at once, so it's all good. So you're just doing pinky to pinky, middle finger to middle finger, etc. So just can't do that. I'm just going to keep, you know, I am contemplating doing a time lapse now, but you know what? Nah. It only takes a moment. I'll just keep talking through it. Index 3, index 4. So it's all good. Again, this isn't really a tutorial for how to do 2, 3, 4. Nope, 1. Yeah, this isn't really a tutorial for how to do this. It's just kind of just doing a little bit of a quick start to get you set up and stuff. And there are loads and loads and loads of tutorials if you want to do something specific out there. And like I said, I will show you a little bonus thing at the end. Okay, let's do the neck now. So I want to do neck 1, head. So I'll do the head there, and then we're good. So to get the animation data onto here now, all you have to do in character 1, which is our target, is we can just go select data 1, and we have now retarget the animation onto it. You can see there's a weird funky joint there. That's just because there's procedural joints and stuff on these rigs, which I haven't accounted for in this instance. But you can see now we've retargeted the animation to that, which is really, really cool. Another thing you can do, so this is a feature that's very common in Motion Builder, probably less known about in Maya, unless using it day to day and all the time. So what we can do, and you know, we can tweak these controls and stuff to really dial it in. And there's a really good deep dive into this by someone I've worked with in the past called Bryan Brewer. It's all based in Motion Builder, but he has some very good retargeting tutorials on how to retarget using HumanIK. I'll link one in the description below. It's one I actually used to learn how to do this myself. It's really good, and he's a really talented animator. We've worked together in the past on. He's a cool guy. Anyway, so just going back to this, what we can do in Maya, which is also a tool that's really common in Motion Builder, is we can just click, if we go into, say, I think it's on the data 1 we want to be on. In fact, no, sorry, my apologies. It's character 1 we want to be on, so this is the target one. I'm just going to rename it and just call it target. There we go. In the definition tab, if we click on this drop down here and click edit character definition and then edit character definition again, you want to go into this HumanIK properties tab here. So you can get straight to that by just going edit character definition, edit HumanIK properties. And then we can actually change how this retargets, which is really cool. And these are all options that are available in Motion Builder. So if you were to follow a Motion Builder tutorial for this is where those options are in Maya. So one we'll turn on is match source, and that'll match the source data in position to where match our skeleton to where the source data is. So if I scale this up a bit, you can kind of see the feet follow, which is pretty cool. And we can also move it in 3D space and do cool things. What I'm also going to do is, and this is the main thing I'm going to do now, is like a cool little quick thing, is feet contacts. So if I turn those on, And you can tweak these settings as much as you want. Again, Bryan's video is really good for this. But if you turn on feet contacts, you see how the feet are colliding with the floor? So that's a really cool thing you can do with this. So if you want to just plant the feet, you can do that. Obviously, it requires a bit more tweaking. You can also set up the toes to properly deform and stuff automatically. But it's just a really cool way of doing it. And then when you're happy with what you've got, if you just bake to control rig or bake to skeleton, so it's going to bake the animation down now. It's going to give us a control rig. That's it. So now the animation data is on our animation rig. This probably took way longer than it would normally take me to do by explaining it and stuff, but a lot of it was doing all this HumanIK setup. But once you've done that, it's a piece of cake, really. It doesn't take long. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So I'm going to save this, and you can do whatever you want. You can go and actually start modifying your Mocap data, maybe, you know, create an animation layer or something. You see my layers are a bit messed up because I've done this a few times just because I broke some things. You know, create some animation layers, maybe add some filters just to clean up some of the noise, things like that. I'm not going to dive into that here because I'm just dipping into all that myself. This is just how to use this pack, really. But yeah, that's pretty much how you get it set up. Obviously, you'd want to go in and just create something a bit nicer. This is just kind of a getting started, just showing you what you need to do to get this working. Now, as a little bonus, I'm going to show you what I do with these, just to kind of give you some ideas. So I mentioned earlier that there was this really cool tool by Red9 called the animation binder. So I'm going to put a link in the description to the masterclass that Mark created for this. It's really, really good, and it's basically a tutorial on how to use this tool. If you guys want, and you want a bit of a deep dive into it, I'll go through how I made my animation rigs as well. But just as a bonus, this is what I do with this animation. So I have this little button up here, which brings in what's called a binder file. And this is what it looks like. So it's my custom animation rig, and it's got this skeleton underneath it. So it's got like a copy of itself. So if I hide the actual rig, you see it's got this SRC skeleton or source skeleton with all these diamonds on it. It's like, what do these diamonds do? Well, they're part of the animation binder. Essentially, what happens is this skeleton here with the diamonds on it actually drives my animation rig. So all my animation controls are bound to that, which is really, really cool. But right now, let's see if I can just show you. Let's see if I can move this control. And these little diamonds, these follow the joints and allow me to apply global offsets. Again, Mark really dives into this in his masterclass video, so definitely watch that. This is just me just showing you how it's set up on my machine, just to give you an idea. And it is quite straightforward to set up. So the way I've got this set up is I've got exactly the same setup I just showed you. So I've got a HumanIK definition set up for this skeleton here, which is the skeleton that drives my animation rig. And then the source for this is a Rokoko skeleton that drives everything. So basically what I do is I import my animation data onto the skeleton, and you can see that it's applying the animation data to the rig through HumanIK, and it's just crazy. But it works, it's really well. And you see I've got the floor contact set up as well, and that looks really cool. So again, if I were to go to the skeleton that drives my animation rig and set it to stance, then it puts my character in a T-pose, and you can see the data playing behind it. So when I'm working with this data, what I do is, I'll show you actually. Again, this is the reason I'm using namespaces here is so I can do this. So the cool thing about the FBX importer is I can do this. Drag and drop. And you see I've got the file content that says add. If I hit update animation, then I hit import, it will just overwrite the animation on my source skeleton. So I can just drag and drop in the files I want because all my retargeting setup is all ready to go. Do that. I could do this one, for example. I do need to fix this. So this is the shot with Vader. And the cool thing about the animation binder is you see how it's applying the animation to like almost to the rig. If I just go back and I'll just do the hand signal one, just let it update. So I've got the hand signal one here in this tool. you can bake the animation to the rig. So if I hit bake binder with one of the controls selected, it's going to go through, and it's still using HumanIK, but it's not baking it to a HumanIK rig, it's baking it to a totally custom rig. Okay, so that's done, and I've actually just baked it on the wrong frame rate. I'd normally do 30, but for the sake of the tutorial, it doesn't matter. But if I go in here, I can actually delete this now, my source data, because I don't need it, and I can delete my source skeleton, and I might just unparent that. I now have an animation rig with the animation baked to it, and what's cool as well is it baked the animation to both my IK and my FK controls. I've not totally set this up properly, you can see there's a bit of a difference there, but it'll work for a demo purpose right now. But yeah, so that's just kind of like a little bonus example on how I make use of these, just to kind of show you a different method rather than just using HumanIK. So you can see here, like for example, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is just the raw data, and I was learning how to use the tools at the time. And this is just an asset pack just to kind of let you dive into doing a bit of this without having to actually purchase a really expensive bit of kit. I'll probably do more of these in the future. I'll see what happens, see what comes up. But for now, if you got any problems or any questions, please put them below. I will probably make a video or a quick short or something in the future, just kind of explaining problems that might happen. But yeah, that's to have fun creating some animations. And like I said, there's a whole pack in there, and it's the same process for all of them. And definitely check out the tutorials that I'll be linking below. And also do your own. And this isn't how to do it. This is here's how to use this stuff. So you definitely want to dive in and look up how to use it in your specific circumstance. And it is just a source for animation data. That's all it really is.